Hello, and in this video we're going to look at setting a canard for your model, such as on a Eurofighter Typhoon or anything else that has canards. If you've come from the typical sort of Futaba JR radio, you would probably have to plug your canard into, let's say, auxiliary 1 socket, and then you're having to think about, well, I've got to mix the elevator to aux 1, I've got to disable the aux 1 controls so that it doesn't interfere with it, and how do I do do I include trim? Have I not got trim? And how do I do things like set a different trim for landing? For instance, in Carf's Eurosport, they suggest setting the canard trailing edge down about 10 millimeters to assist with takeoff and landing. All beautifully and easily done in Jeti, so let's have a look, but it's going to be quite different to the way you're used to, especially if you've come from some of the Japanese radios. So we'll go into our menu, into Model, and what we're going to do is actually create a control called canard. So we say plus. To save time, I'll just call it C, and we give it a control to actually work with, and it's going to be my elevator stick. Say OK to that. Now, at the moment, that won't include the trim buttons, so the servo will not go if I use the elevator trim. If you wanted to include the trim, just come along here, click the button, say plus, come down to digital trim, come to trim on stick 2, P2, that one, and add it. Say OK, and there you go. Your trimmer would also work the canard, but I don't want it to, so I'll go in here, clear it, say OK. Right, so we've set up a function called canard, we've assigned a control to it, the trim buttons won't work on it. Say OK to that. We need to assign our canard servo. Come down here, I'm going to assign it to, it would have looked like this. I'm going to assign it to 8 because that's where I've got the servo plugged into the receiver. So there we go. Say OK to that. Now the great thing about having a function is if you go into fine tuning, things like dual rate exponential, there the canard has its own rates, expos and such like if you should wish them. It has a function curve, so you can set it up that way if you wish. Obviously, straightforward things like travels you could do in the servo setup. Go to the canard servo, set its endpoints either way, or you can come in here and choose, say, a 3-point curve, and you can affect its endpoints and what have you. So let's switch the radio on and have a look. And here we have our canard servo. Lovely. I say it's got all its bits and pieces that you would expect any function to have. What we're going to do now, you want the trim of it to change for takeoff or landing. I'm going to put that on my flap switch. The reason being that when I'm flying different models, I don't want to have to think of different checklists in my mind and operate different switches. On the downwind leg, I want to put retract switch down, flap switch down. That's it. I don't want to have to think, oh, well, this is like a Eurofighter Typhoon, it's a tailless Delta, it doesn't have flaps, it's got canard, so I've got to move the canard. Where's the canard switch? Oh God, I've forgotten where that one is. And sort of, no, I just want retract down, flap switch down. So although there's no flaps on the model, the flap switch will operate the canard. Right, off we go. What we're going to do is create some flight modes. So we're going to add a mode, copy it, I'll call it takeoff. I'll just do T for short for the moment, save time, and don't need a delay on it. The switch, I'll put my flap switch to the up position, say OK, flap switch to my takeoff position, say OK. Lovely, that's that flight mode set, default. We'll add, copy that one, lovely. This one, we'll call it the landing mode. Say OK, and do that. Move my flap switch to the full flap position for landing, say OK. There we have our flight mode set. And now it's very easy. Come to flight mode trim, come down to canard, change it to separate settings for each flight mode. And now I've got my flaps switch in the normal flying around position. I don't want any flight mode trim. Go to takeoff. I can set some value of takeoff trim. It would need to be a negative in this particular example. And if I move the switch to the landing position, I can set the same or a different trim. I'll use a different one just for the sake of this demonstration. So the canard now is trimmed for cruise, takeoff and landing. And just to prove that, we come over here. Here's our canard servo, up, down. That's cruise, takeoff, landing. It's not much movement, I've only dialed in small amounts, but you get the idea. And that is how simple it is to set up a canard.